Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's BAInsights. And today we're talking about prototyping, wireframes, and mockups, which are absolutely a key topic for any BA, particularly those involved in designing products or talking about products with a very, tangible outcome, or a report perhaps. To talk about this topic today, I've got two excellent guests. Both of them are going to introduce themselves shortly before we go into the topic. For anyone that's new, welcome. Good if you can subscribe as well. It really does help, as well as dropping a like on the video. And absolutely, if you can share your comments, share your experiences, that's always nice to hear as well. It's always nice to hear what the audience are thinking about the topic. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's go into some introductions, and let's start with you, Artem, please.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here, John. Pleased to meet everyone here. Uh, I'm a system business analyst with 8 years of experience behind my back. Primarily, my domain of expertise is cybersecurity, although I've been to different projects, health insurance, government products, e-commerce, and every of them had their own user interface, and every of them at the beginning had their own prototypes and wireframes. Pleased to
Excellent.
meet you.
Thank you, Artem. And Vivienne.
Hi, John. Thank you again for having me as well. My name is Vivienne Onwuocha. I have been a business analyst for over 15 years. My specialty is ERP implementation, SAP for starters. I have a finance background, so I tend to implement the finance module. And as part of that, when I saw this topic, I was like, well, this is off my street because I have done lots of wireframing in the past. I have done prototyping for some companies as well. So I'm really looking forward to actually, getting into this conversation. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, you've absolutely convinced me, not that you needed to, that you're experts on the topic anyway, certainly enough to get us through the session. So maybe I wonder, Arthur, if we can start by actually understanding from your perspective, what is prototyping or mock-ups and wireframes, and why are they important aspects of business analysis?
Well, essentially, all of those named are a visualization tool. You will visualize your product, uh, how it will look like, how user interacts with them. However, each of those has its own focus, even though pursuing more or less the same goal. Each of them focus slightly a little on different things. So if we're talking about on wireframes, those cover mostly the layouts, the structure, and the functionality itself. Whereas when we talk about mockups, it brings an aesthetics to the wireframes, adding colors and the branding or fonts, and represents the look and feel of your product to be. And lastly but not least, the prototypes gives a more whole picture of all of it, adding some interactions with it, and usually covering the user journey or the workflow, uh, like the whole of it. Uh, for the BA, I think it's crucial because it's a tool that you can utilize and will give you more support in facilitating the conversation. So if imagine you explain a workflow without a business process diagram. Yeah, yes, your words will make sense and it will get to your stakeholders. However, it's crucial to have that visual representation to support your words and that people can follow all along.
Excellent. A brilliant answer is Artem to open it up. Might make it difficult actually for Vivienne to follow, but I'm sure she'll do okay. Vivienne, what's your perspective on that same question?
No, totally agree with Artem. But then again, because at the end of the day, we're as business analysts, we're there to tell a story. And it's if we don't have the visuals, like Artem said, it's part of a visual storytelling. And our stakeholders sometimes they have an idea in their head and you think you get it, and then you bring it to life, and they're like, no, that's not what I want. So it's always good to have that, like, the wireframe to kind of showcase, okay, this is a skeleton of what we're bringing to the table. Have we actually captured your requirements correctly? And then, your prototyping is where you're trying to see, okay, let's build something, let's be like an MVP for you, where you can go and play around and make sure that this is exactly what you want before we then go build the full design. And and mock-ups as well is not necessarily as extensive as a prototype, but then you can have an idea with the visuals, with aesthetics, the colors, and see if we're going in the right direction. So it is very important that, for me, I like to use a combination of depending on the project, of all three, to kind of ensure that we've nailed the requirements, we're all on the same page, and the stakeholders get what they want.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, and from the way we tend to use them, it very much depends on the scope of the product, of course,
Yeah.
and how much detail we need to go. I mean, I've worked on projects where we might be you might be required to determine the structure of reports, like physical reports, and in that case, a wireframe typically is quite appropriate. Just to recognise the major objects on that report and the
Yes.
configuration of it. Whereas on the opposite side of the scale, when we've actually got, I think you mentioned, Vivienne, like the MVP, if we've got the need to have something that is somewhat usable so that our stakeholders and users can start to interact with it and determine the further aspects of the functionality, that's when prototyping can be useful.
Yes.
As well. And I think as BAs, it's important to have those skills and those techniques to be able to interact and engage with the stakeholders and really explore what it is they need and why. And also conversely, I think to be able to communicate that with other stakeholders, such as the architects, the development team, the testers, as an example. It's probably a lot easier to digest a picture first than it is, a series of words and specifications. Not that the specification isn't important, it is. It's just generally we tend to build that around, I think, the mock-up or the visual representation. Anyway, and I wonder, I mean, Vivienne, what are the benefits of or what are some of the benefits, at least, of using prototypes, mock-ups, and wireframes?
You've already touched on some of them. So one of them is obviously shared understanding, so ensuring that we're all on the same page, we're all speaking the same language. One of the things that you touched on that I was smiling about was with the developers, because developers don't like to read text. Most of them just like to give it to them. This is what we're doing. And so when you have the mock-ups and you have your wireframes, they can get an idea of what the solution should look like or what the design should look like. And they can then start to ask questions. But just read the BRD if you can. but the fact that we've got that as well, and when you bring things to life, like in my experience, you find that the stakeholders are more engaged because because it's no longer a concept. It's not something that is very tangible. Be it the wireframe, be it a prototype. Prototype even better because I worked on a project where we built a prototype and we invited people to come in and play around and give feedback. So again, improve the feedback on what that solution should look like. So it was very low. It wasn't very expensive to create. It was very like, okay, this is going to be the real thing. However, this is an idea of what we're trying to build. So that's what I've seen that, just having something tangible kind of, drives stakeholder engagement. It gets everybody like stakeholder buy-in, and our developers are usually happier on the project when we have all those all those visuals to help them with getting them to develop the solution.
That's right, and the feedback you mentioned as well. I mean, by having the prototypes, and mock-ups, and the wireframes, it provides that opportunity for earlier feedback, doesn't it? Rather than wait for the solution.
Especially if it's a waterfall project, right? So I mean, agile, we know we get that because we get to do our sprint review, and so we can showcase that. But when it's a waterfall project where we're getting the requirements upfront, it's good for us to get a sign off as part of our deliverable to our stakeholders before we get to build it.
Great. And Artem, be your view.
We'll add a little bit on that. Well, I think the foremost reason why it's beneficial is to save time and money, of course. It's always costs less to build a prototype, to validate it, to find new requirements, rather than just go into development and wander in the forest without any clue what you're doing. So saving time and money, that's the first one I would like to mention. Another one is, as Vivienne said, is the early feedback. The capability to move fast with the prototypes. You just iterate, and you get your feedback from your stakeholders early in the project is also very crucial so that you can adjust early on. Prototyping also helps you to discover any areas of concerns or even discover something that you haven't thought about. So the stakeholders seeing a prototype would like ask you, oh, we're missing this information, or how would we cover this use case? So that brings you more tools to your requirement solicitation. And of course, the validation itself, throughout iterations, you get continuous feedbacks, and you can improve and build on top your current prototypes.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to sort of build on some of those sort of softer aspects that you were referring to, Artem, because I think having prototypes of whatever level they are, whether they're prototypes or simple wireframes, is really just a really good way to understand what it is the users need and for them to explore as well. Because I think it's easy to assume that a user knows every aspect of what it is they require from any solution or any report or anything that's visual. But sometimes it's only when you start to see that product or that output evolve, will it promote their thinking and get them to think about what else they need or maybe things that they don't need. And as you said, Artem, it's a lot cheaper to do that on paper or on some tools early on as part of the analysis than have developers and testers and DevOps, etc., involved to bring it back to a user so they can actually get to use it for the first time. So yeah, I think additional to that, and again, sticking on with the softer side of things, I think having prototypes or probably more so wireframes and mock-ups actually are a really good way to engage with your stakeholders, reflect early of what you've been hearing, recognize that you've been listening, and it could be a basis to not only therefore gain credibility that you actually are understanding or you are asking the right questions, but in time it will become a tool that can help you build some relationships with those stakeholders as well. So I think I'd probably call out those softer benefits rather than the excellent ones that you called out as well. And I wonder, sorry, Austin, go on.
Yeah, also wanted to mention another thing on feedbacks is that, say, with prototyping, you can actually give your prototype to your end users, whereas they can actually utilize it and give you good hints of whether you're doing the right product for the right people or you mess up somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's not just so I guess it's the appropriateness of the product as well is important. Is as important as whether that product is usable as well. So yeah, really, really, really good point. Well made there.
Being user centric is very crucial in that point.
Yes.
And we've spoken about we've spoken about wireframes and mock-ups and prototypes. There's probably also sketches which arguably probably closer to wireframes or mock-ups, I guess. But is there or how do you approach and decide what level of fidelity or what level of detail, if you like, is appropriate in your mock-ups or wireframes or prototypes?
Well, ideally, you should build up. So you go from the very low fidelity, like you start with the wireframes, or I don't know, your wireframes could be on paper, just it, and then you build on top. Like at some point, you would add an aesthetics to give your stakeholders the understanding of how the application or like any product you're building will look and feel from the visual standpoint. And after that, you can build even more on it and provide a high fidelity prototypes that will be nearly as close as possible to the final product. It's really a tricky question how you decide which one to use. I think it depends on the multiple factors. Well, firstly, I would say it's on which stage the project is, because I had a project where there was already existing a UI kit, so we had like all the basic like colors, fonts. We knew the navigation, and after that, the wireframe was just enough. was just enough to get the understanding of what structure do we have, what buttons do we have, what actions we can call, what information do we have displayed, or which information do we need to input. So at that point, wireframes was enough. However, if for your stakeholders, it's important from the aesthetic points of view, let's say it's a redesign project, right? Maybe wireframes wouldn't be the best choice. At that point, you might thinking about starting off with the mockups at least, and moving slightly to the clickable prototype.
And Vivienne?
For me, it's always about the budget. I mean, like Artem said, it's you can do it on a whiteboard, or you can do it on a piece of paper, right? If it's just like, okay, this is the idea, this is what we think, or this is what I think I'm hearing, does this work? And that's just like, throw away. Or you can even use Post-it notes. It all depends on the maturity of the company I'm working with, and again on the budget. So I worked on a project where they were replacing their pricing and quoting system from Excel to they're going to be using like a similar system, but not Excel, but like a system, but they wanted it to have the Excel feel. So again, what I had to do with that was I used Visio to kind of sketch that up and then put in the Excel buttons, and I was able to speak with the developer, and he got what we wanted to build. But another project where it was a new thing for them, and they couldn't visualize how it worked. So we had to they had the budget for it. So we had to kind of build it in a sandbox and show it to them and prove that it could work before they went on to build the bigger system. So again, it all depends. The budget depends on like Artem said, depends at the stage of the project we're at, and the tools. But luckily for us, these days there's so many tools to use, right? I mean, in the past it was either a PowerPoint or you could use Bathmake, but now we've got Figma, we've got Axio, we've got even Canva. So there's so many tools available to us that is free to us to use as well. So it's not as expensive as before. So yeah, but for me, it will depend on the maturity of the project of the stakeholders I'm dealing with, and all the timelines that I have, and the budget that is in place.
Yeah, and I will build on that as well and say, it's definitely resonating. And I think there's when it comes to the stakeholders project, the situation, that definitely has an impact on things as well. I mean, I'm thinking of examples where you really need stakeholder buy-in to get excited about the product that's being built as well. And I think if that is a situation, then it's definitely useful to have something a little bit more plush, high fidelity, something usable, something that people can get excited with, and maybe sometimes something that stakeholders can walk around and impress their seniors if they need to. That's not always ideal, but it can be a good reason. I think when it comes to the level of fidelity, though, I think definitely agree with what Artem was saying before. I think going level by level, layer by layer, is typically most appropriate, so that you don't end up going too far. Because if you can convey exactly the right information in a wireframe, then really any additional effort and cost and time to build out a working prototype is probably not particularly valuable. It's certainly time consuming. You could probably be doing other things, but there'll certainly be occasions where doing that is the right thing to do. Another point as well, I mean, as you were talking about tooling, we'll come to that in a moment as well. So I think tooling can obviously be a factor in the level of fidelity and detail that we can go to. Certainly those of us that might only have access to Visio and PowerPoint as an example, will only ever get so far with some of those other tools that we'll go on to talk about. But it also makes me think about the skills as well. And I've worked on projects where we've had designated designers sometimes, and that provides another level of opportunity, because those designers can start to take the ideas, take the concepts, and start to build on your mock-ups and your wireframes as well.
Yes. And just to add to that as well, in terms of tools, and I just worked on a project where, to understand the product, I did the wireframe for myself. But then when I went to a meeting with the stakeholders, I just kind of said, "Oh, this is what I did," and they were like, "Wow!" It was like, Wow, yes. And then, they were able to feed back on it. So just to show the importance of it, I was only doing it for myself to get a clear understanding.
Yeah.
However, I took it to a meeting to kind of just say, am I on the right path? Because it's a whole new product. It's never been brought to the market before. And they were like, and it became part of my deliverable. It was like, can we expand that? Can we add to that? And so yeah, it is really it's a very good visual to help bring that project to life and get the stakeholders to buy into it. Yeah.
That's it. And Vivian, you nicely took us on to tools as well. So I should go into a bit more detail with you on that. I know you mentioned a few tools. I think Balsamic, I'm familiar with that as a tool. I think
Yes.
it's Canva, Azure. And of course, there's the old favorites, PowerPoint, Visio. You can even do it on paper, of course. But
Yes.
is there a preference that for yourself, something a tool that you tend to use
So
or might
if you had asked me this like maybe 6 months ago, I'd have said, well, I had Canva, I have a Visio, but I currently came across one of the projects I just worked on recently. I used Lucid Spark,
okay?
and I actually initially I was a bit like, no, I'm not going to use this. I mean, this is what kind of tool is this? Well, I actually loved it. It was very easy to use. You could put your colors, you could put your text, you could put your data flows. So I think I'll be promoting that. Like Lucid Spark was actually a good one to use, and that was what I used to kind of get the vision to life for my stakeholders to kind of agree that that was what they were hoping to get. So yes, so
Excellent.
that's one of the tools. Yeah.
And Artem, any tools that you tend to use or might recommend?
Of course, there are those that already have been named, so we usually use Figma.
Mhm.
Well, why we would use Figma? Because, well, firstly, it has a bunch of integrations, so with Jira, with Slack, so it makes life easier. Secondly, it's a collaborative tool, so you can invite people, they can collaborate, they can leave comments. Like, so it's one point of contact basically for all of you to work on the prototypes, and it's also all in one place. So not only prototypes, but you have like ability to do flowcharts, story mapping, whatever you wish there.
Yeah.
So that's one tool. The other tool is quite simpler and it's only already been named Balsamic. Um, I absolutely love it. Like it's easy. It's just drag and drop of like basic elements, but that's only for sketches and wireframes.
Yeah.
So it has like basic stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, on top of the tools that you've mentioned as well, I haven't used it for a while, but I assume it's still available. But there was a tool called Delphi, which allows you to sort of build what an application could look like, almost like introduce the buttons, as it were, and start using like proper objects, as it may. In that particular example, and there's probably other examples as well, the developers could then pick up that mock-up and start to build the code behind it. So not to say that's the default people should go to, but it's probably an example of, if you speak to the development team and the architects and the design team, they may already be using tools themselves to configure and create the screens. So if
Yeah.
they are, perhaps it's a tool that you can get access to, and you can therefore move things around, add objects, and it might be a little step closer to what the developers need to pick up. Anyway, maybe
Like
that would be one for me to see if it's still about.
I'll check out Delphi, John. But can I just add to that? Sorry, I just
Yeah,
thought
certainly. Yeah,
the fact that we have AI. With AI now, you can actually ask AI to create you that mock-up,
that's
right?
right.
You
Yeah,
can take that, the tools for that now. You can take that to your meetings and showcase that to your stakeholders. So that's cutting down the time of doing all the drawing. All you have to do is just give the right prompts and the right requirements, and it can give you that as well.
that's it. Yeah, and that really, really a valid point, Vivian, because you don't have to just use it as well for the mocking up. Sometimes you can use it to determine is there questions that you should ask or could ask, things you
Mhm.
might have missing, maybe get a bit more understanding about some of the context and concepts as well that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's glad you mentioned that.
Uh, Adding on the AI topic, I've also encountered this product. Well, it's not advertisement. I haven't been paid a penny, but there's this product Lovable, which one of our clients like feedbacked very good about. It not only builds the visual part, like the prototype, but it also builds the code behind it. So
What
it's
do you call it?
basically
Lovable.
lovable. Yeah.
I love the name. I'm writing that down.
I can only assume it must be Artem as you've called it out. So if brilliant, yeah. So definitely a few tools there for people to take away.
Mhm.
I wonder, Artem, are there any common mistakes that either you or you see others make when it comes to wireframing and prototyping and mockups?
Um, let's say, firstly, I would say that you don't have to do everything in one sit. So you don't have to deliver the whole prototype in one go. It's rather an iterative process, and you can start with low fidelity rather than focusing on aesthetics or like all the sitemap of your application or website. So I would say that's the first thing. Perhaps treating it as the final design, as a final visual part of the product is also might be not a very good thing because
Yeah,
the requirements change, people's envision things differently throughout the time, and it's definitely not the blueprint to go to the final design. So it might get slightly changes throughout the course.
yeah. That is a really particularly strong point, I think, on that one because I've seen plenty of examples in the past where you put a mock-up together, and then someone better, quite frankly, and from a design sense, it might be the designer, it might be the developer. They'll take your ideas and they'll have a different view and a perspective on it, and they'll end up presenting something that's far more usable, far more logical, but it's got the main components of what you've asked for, and it's got the main usability that was requested. So I think that's a really valid point that BAs, we're using our initial mock-ups to inform the team that come next or the development team and work and actually we maybe use it as a basis as well to work with those individuals and those teams to evolve the designs rather than just hand it over to them.
Yeah.
Exactly. People spark with ideas. Why not add another one to your prototypes at some point? Sure.
That's it.
Even if it's in the middle of development somewhere, like.
Absolutely right.
Right.
Vivienne, any common mistakes that you've witnessed?
So for me, I just feel like sometimes because we're BAs, we're not UX designers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I like the fact that you said we might have a UX designer on the team as well, and it's just a conversation starter. The initial prototype, the low fidelity sketching we've done is just a conversation starter, and somebody else can take that and make it into something more beautiful. And so let's not. I think so. The problem sometimes is that we waste time trying to get it to be perfect, and there's nothing like perfection because as long as stakeholders understand or we brought their visual to life. It's a sketch, right?
Yeah.
It's not the end. It's a sketch, and I like how Artem said it's not the final product. So we can iterate and go back and forth. And so sometimes I find some new BAs or maybe still starting in their journey, spending so much time trying to get it right, and then miss deadlines.
Yeah.
But it's not about it being perfect. It's about it ensuring that your stakeholders, you have got the vision of your stakeholders. This is what they want, getting them to even add into it. So sometimes what I'll do is
Yeah.
I do a sketch of it, and it's a conversation. It's part of our workshop, so you start to fit into it to kind of then it then becomes their own, and they can own it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would say as well that on top of that just sometimes not utilizing existing assets can be a challenge and an issue in itself because there are sometimes there are already application in place, for example. So if you're making a relatively modest change, sometimes it's appropriate just to take a screen grab of that application and to annotate what you might need to add to it and where it is, and that can be simple enough, not particularly time consuming, and give all the information that's required.
Yes.
So that can help.
Yeah.
And likewise, there might be existing designs for the application. There might be, similar views for similar reports. And if there's something existing really that can be leveraged and you have access to it,
Mhm.
then I think that can save some time as well. And maybe allow you to then get into that interaction with the stakeholders and really get to the detail.
I like that, John. Actually, can I just say, because especially if it's a new BA, again, so let's say, for example, it was a website. You ask, what are the types of websites you like? And then they might have an idea. And you can then, like you said, get a screenshot. So you don't necessarily have to be drawing it from scratch or designing it from scratch. You already have a starter. So just to add to that we should always think about some mistakes we don't make is we're not asking them, is there anything similar that we can use as our baseline and then we can build on. So that's one of the key questions we should be asking.
I wonder, Vivienne, is there any advice that you would give to BAs who perhaps feel less confident in their visual design or their prototyping skills, and maybe as a result might be reluctant to do some of the prototyping or mock-ups?
So let me start, because one of the things I do is I do train people looking to get into the tech space. Okay. And I tell them when we're doing this, like as part of our process flow module, I say to them, a process modeling module, I say to them, I'm a terrible artist. I can't even draw to save my life. So even if I'm doing it on paper or pen, I start by saying, hold on, it might be rubbish. But just look at the logic behind it. Does it make sense, right? And so basically learning to laugh about yourself. There are lots of tools out there now, and they're very easy to use. They're very self-taught. There are lots of YouTube videos, even if you never used the tool before, that can tell you how to go about it. And so I'll encourage anyone that is feeling like, oh, I've never done this before, to try it, to start with the basic tools. Excel, you can do it with Excel using the shapes. You can use Visio if you're already using Visio. So already tools that you're already familiar with, and then start to build on it. Canva, there are lots of easy tools out there. And again, like I said, I'm an AI advocate, and AI is making our life a lot easier. And so you can use AI. So you're not drawing it, you're just telling it what to draw, and it can come up with an image for you. So I would say to you, start small and then build your confidence gradually as you go along.
Excellent advice. And I know some of those tools you mentioned, like Canva, they have templates for various objects as well, don't they? So you can drag on what's most appropriate anyway.
Yes.
Artem, what's your view?
I would say the first thing I would recommend is not skipping the why and what's questions. So rather than just diving into prototyping, figure out first like the basics of the BA, like figure out the problem, figure out what you're building, why you're building it, what problem do you solve, your stakeholders, etc. So the context matters here, because as you understand the context more, you will be able to produce a more viable and a more valuable outputs. Then, like nowadays, everybody uses a lot of apps, a lot of websites. Those basically make up the best practices. Just take your top, go through them, and just take the best parts. There's also this website, Mobbin, with double B, I've encountered recently. It's like a Pinterest just for the app designs, app/website designs. So just Google, see what works. There's a lot of papers, a lot of best practices, a lot of leaders on the market within any domain. So you can just take a look there and improve.
Yeah, excellent advice. Again, I should say. I mean, I think beyond that, I think sometimes there's some really simple options as well for people that are not too confident in their visual skills. Maybe you can see elements of images that you can pull from Google as an example. There's nothing wrong with cutting and pasting images together to form a rough picture of what you're trying to aspire to. Because as we said, we're not trying to produce the perfect product that's going to exactly match the end product. As long as we can convey the need and the interaction and the typical behaviors, as well as what we shouldn't be able to do, that's always sufficient. I think it's probably important as well for BAs to recognise and have confidence perhaps in the analysis that's gone before the prototyping. I think understanding who your stakeholders are, understanding the context of their business and their domain, having knowledge of their process and the why as well, Artem, as you said. All of that creates that backdrop and that story that helps the business, that helps the BA know why they're prototyping, know what they're trying to achieve, and probably allow them to not feel too critical, perhaps, if they're not producing the Van Gogh of prototypes, as there's such a thing.
Precisely, John. As the core BA skill is like storytelling and communication. Everybody on the team understands that you're not a designer at that point, and nobody expects you to produce like a top-notch, like out of this world designs. So it's your skill to capture everything that's within the requirements, put them in the artifacts such as prototypes or the wireframe, and tell this story from the beginning till end. That's it.
And awesome. Is there one piece of advice on making prototypes or wireframes or mock-ups a more integral part of anyone's BA practice? And if so, what is that? What's that advice you would give?
I would say that it's a really usable tool, a really valuable tool if you use it for collaboration and with iterations. So it's not something that you do on your own, don't show to anybody, and just at the end you're like, here how it's going to be. No, it doesn't work like that. So the earlier you bring the stakeholders to your designing process, the more iterations you will have, the better output you will have.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Vivienne.
Again, I guess especially for new BAs, prototyping is not for every project, right? It depends on the project you're working on. If you're working on a process improvement project, you hardly be prototyping anything. But if you're trying to work on like a software design or an ERP solution, then yes, you might need, obviously you might have prototyping, and I would encourage you to use that as one of your toolkits to get your stakeholders to buy in, to remove any vagueness from the requirements, to kind of bring visuals, because some, like I like what you said, John, earlier on about understanding the business. And your stakeholders, some of them are visuals, some of them like text. So just to ensure, like, the reason why I'll bring prototyping into my documentation is because I'm trying to meet everybody's needs in the different ways that they see things. So the visuals amongst us have something to see and to look and use that to ask your questions and get clarity on it. And then obviously the text that follows the storytelling, like Artem says, is for those that like to read more about what we're doing, and then they can also get to understand the requirements from that angle. So yes, basically it will be depending on your project. If you've got the opportunity to use prototyping or wireframes or mockups to bring more clarity to for your stakeholders, then do it.
Yeah, and I think my advice would be really that firstly that to give some training and guidance to individuals in your BA practice and in your BA team, so that they have the awareness that prototyping, mock-ups and wireframes are an option, and that really they know when to use them. So I always tend to think, if we're working on something visual like a report, like a screen or an application or a website, we're maybe just start with your mock-up first and actually start to build your story around that mock-up. So and then to not just ditch it afterwards. So we don't, the mock-up can exist throughout your analysis life cycle. It could be something you use to evolve ideas, build that understanding with the stakeholders. You can refine it as you go. You can have it as an integral part of your requirements. Your requirements can refer to it. You'll obviously hand it over and evolve it and collaborate with the development team as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I feel like that's probably it feels like we've covered quite a lot, actually, thanks to your expert advice and a little occasional tidbit from myself, perhaps. I feel like probably not a great deal more to say on prototypes, wireframing, and mock-ups. I think that apart from just to implore and encourage BAs out there to just start using them, start exploring them, make them part of your BA practice. And if you do, maybe come back and drop some comments and share with me, Artem and Vivienne, how it went on.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
But for the meantime, I think all that's left is just to thank you both for your time and your insights. It's definitely excellent to speak to you and hear what you've got to say. Loads of interesting and very valid points around the topic as well, of course.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
For sure. Thank you for sharing, guys.
Thank you.